Welcome. In front of me is a TCL 20 Pro 5G, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview of this phone. So without further ado, let's actually pop it open. So there it is. There's nothing on the top. Now this is for some reason at an angle, as you can see. It kind of sagged in there. It's actually kind of new, so usually, if you ever have been getting phones recently, usually this is made out of plastic, but they decided to go more eco-friendly way, which made out of paper. Neat. Here we go. Pop this out. So nothing on here, obviously. Then inside here we got paperwork along with a casing for the device, which I always appreciate. There we go. So I'm gonna drop that here, get rid of the paperwork because, let's be honest, no one really cares about it. And we got a Type-C to Type-A charger, as you can see right here, Type-A in the side, and there's the Type-C on the other side. And we get earbuds, which that's actually also surprising. Anyway, they're kind of in there, so I'm not gonna really push them out. And again, another nice inclusion is a charger. Now, I'm kind of saying this in a joking way, but it is kind of serious topic considering some really high brands like Samsung, Apple stopped including chargers. So it's always nice to see one with your phone that you actually paid for, right? And considering this costs basically half the price of any kind of like, maybe not half, but it is, I would say, competitively priced compared to other devices, and it still comes with a charger, so thumbs up for that. Now the charger right here, I believe it's supposedly 18 watts. I'm just gonna make sure, and yep, it is. So you can see right, hopefully, actually I would need to change the sharpness of the camera, but it is 18 watts on here. So let's just get rid of this, drop the charger right here. So pop it out of the paper, and right off the bat I have to give props. The phone feels super nice. Turn it on. Oh, there we go. So yeah, right off the bat this is a really nice phone in terms of how it feels. It's really nicely made. I really like the design here, but anyway, let's get to the first aspect of it, which is the display, which you can start seeing right now. So let me make the camera a little bit brighter. There we go. So right here we have a 6.67 inch display. It's a 1080p by 2400 pixels AMOLED display. It has an HDR10 rating. It's not really much here, to be honest. It's not 10 plus, just so you know. There is a difference. 10 can be slapped on by basically almost anybody. Well, 10 plus is an actual certification that you need to get. So it has HDR10 with apparently what is written is typical brightness of 420 nits, which I have to say nice to that. So anyway, once it boots up, you can see the screen right here, and this has apparently a 89.6% screen to body ratio, and it looks really nice, although that hole punch camera is quite big in my opinion. Could have been made a little bit better, a little bit smaller. I'm gonna skip through this quickly. Actually, I'm gonna add a fingerprint just so you can see how well the sensor works on the display, and go with the pattern here. Just wipe off my fingers so there isn't like nothing on there. So this does have a under fingerprint reader, as you can see. Let's go next. And there we go. I'm gonna skip the face recognition, I don't really care for it. So there we go. Left hand, right hand, my dominant hand right, obviously. And just skip through this, and there we go. We have, no, there we go. So now we have the home screen. And right off the bat, I have to say the display here looks stellar. This is a really nice display. It's also curved, which I personally, I know not a lot of people are fan of curved displays, but personally I really like them. To me, it just feels so much nicer to use a curved display, especially with gesture navigation when you're trying to swipe from a side. Personally, I just really like it, and I really appreciate that TCL is one of those companies that includes AMOLED displays also with a curved display for a relatively nice price, because honestly this device, I'm gonna say it right now, comes at $500, and in my opinion this is a really good device for the price. Now there might be some other devices that basically offer as much. For instance, this phone I believe does not offer any kind of higher refresh rate. I'm gonna quickly check just to make sure, but I don't think it's one of those things that we have here. Yeah, it looks like there's no high refresh rate, which personally, to be honest, I would pay even extra to have a fairly nice device like this with a high refresh rate display like 120 Hz or even 90, curved display and AMOLED display over it. That would be just a basically unbeatable device in my opinion, because I don't really look for the highest performance, and this has a decent enough performance. I just look for phone to be fairly compact. I mean, this hardly is fairly compact, but comparing to other devices, it has a very nice build, and it is slim overall. It's not a super wide device, so I really like this. But anyway, let's continue the actual overview of this. So lastly, with the display, it has a 395 pixels per inch, so it is a fairly typical display. After all, it is a 1080p display, so almost similar to majority of the devices that have been released this year, last year, and year before that as well. The race for highest pixels on your display is over, and it looks like everybody settled down for 1080p displays. It just, to be honest, it is a logical decision right here, and 1080p on such a device looks super sharp. I can't complain about it, and overall the colors here are amazing. The device has a fairly bright screen. It's not even maxed out right now. I'm not gonna max it out because it's just gonna look on a camera absolutely garbage. As you can probably see, it just gets blown out and doesn't look that great. So anyway, let's move to the cameras, which we have a quad camera set up at the back. One thing that I'll mention right here, there is no camera bump. The only thing that you can see right here, this thing, is the flash right here. So you can see that my finger just catches on this, but this, there is no bump on it, which again, really nice. I really appreciate the fact that there is no bump here. Now going to the cameras, actually we do have a main shooter at 48 megapixels, it's a wide sensor. Then we get a 16 megapixel ultra wide, and then depending where you buy this device it gets tricky. Apparently in US you have a 5 megapixel macro, and only in US, while the rest of the world gets a downgraded 2 megapixel macro. Why? So yeah, that's kind of questionable decision making here. And lastly, we have a 2 megapixel depth sensor, no matter where you're buying the phone from. So to be honest, there's only two cameras here. The two, well, either the 2 and 5 megapixel macro and depth ones are just a sticker camera. They don't have any purpose, only just to make the device look like it has more cameras, so it will objectively look better. There is no other reason to include a 2 megapixel macro or depth sensor. Like, literally there is no reason for it. So only pay attention to the two main cameras, or even just a single one, 48 megapixel, and maybe the 16 megapixel ultra wide. Anything else is just kind of not worth using. Macro will be outperformed. If you have a 2 megapixel macro like I do on this one, it's going to be most certainly outperformed by the 48 megapixel main shooter. The depth sensor usually works like utter garbage and makes the photos come out worse than they are. And if you're kind of wondering how you use it, when you turn on portrait mode and camera, it usually uses the depth sensor to determine the depth between the object and the background, and then creates this fake bokeh effect. But usually that fake bokeh effect is decimated by just this fake blur, which can't really determine what is a foreground and what is a background, so it creates this kind of like halo around the object, and it looks just disgusting. Now I will quickly see if this is the case here. So we have portrait. Let's see, allow, and oh no, better off, it doesn't even use the lens at all. So portrait doesn't actually use the depth sensor here, and I can actually go about it and probably prove it by just capturing a normal, where's the auto? Gonna see if there is any way to actually turn on more. Let's see, super macro, no one cares. High pixel, there we go. So this one will most certainly not use any kind of additional sensor. It's just gonna use the full 48 megapixel single sensor. There we go. Okay, just move this over. Boop, here. So this is the 48 megapixels. I would really like if the there wouldn't be any kind of like flickering, but I don't think I can do anything about it. So anyway, this is the 48 megapixels. As you can see, you can get really close. There is no kind of like halo effect around. The background is nicely blurred. The subject is in focus primarily. As you can see, the focus is a little bit behind, not like at the front of it. That's just my fault, not really the camera. So then this was the, what was it, like auto mode. Again, really decent photo. Again, camera a little bit too close to the subject, so it is blurry in here, but rest of it around is in focus, so that's good. And lastly, this is, whoops, and this is the portrait mode. And as you can see, those don't really differ in any substantial way. So I can basically say that it's not using the depth sensor. So honestly, in here, that is literally a sticker camera. The camera isn't using it. It's not at this moment. When camera is using it, you can clearly see when it's trying to make the fake bokeh effect. But considering the 48 megapixel was looking just as well as the normal either auto or portrait, I can only assume that it's not using it. So now I can also, just for the kick of it, go into the, where is it, more, and go for the what they call super macro. I'm just gonna consider this as a joke. So apparently I can't get close enough to the subject, and let's try that again. It's too close, so I need to keep it. I think this is as close as I can get before the photo becomes blurry. And this is actually max zoom. So like I said, 2 megapixel here is just an absolute joke. And just to compare this, I'm gonna grab my phone, gonna go into my camera, and let's go. I have super macro as well. Now on my Huawei Mate 20 Pro, this actually does the job. So here's just gonna be a objective comparison between those two photos. So I, unlike the other phone, can get way closer, and the photo that will come out here is just gonna blow this one out of the water. So here we go. Here's a nice comparison. So this is a phone that actually comes with a macro, what I would call an actual macro, and this is the one that claims that it comes, but it's just a sticker camera. So this is as far as you can get while holding it zoomed in, because it can't go any further. The resolution of the photo is just so low, and it's already looking blurry. This is basically looking at a separate needles on this tiny little cactus right here, and you can see it just super clearly. So the decision is here, which one looks to you, which one looks better, but I think it's quite clear. So anyway, let's just get out of here and actually touch upon the remaining camera, which is the one on the front, and that is a 32 megapixel wide sensor, and it shoots at 4K 30 and also 1080p 30 and 60. Now at the back you basically have the same specs, video recording at 4K 30 and at 1080p you can record at 30 and 60. So basically the same thing as the front. And lastly would be the specifications of this. So the device comes with a Snapdragon 750G, which is a 5G chipset, so you will get the new connectivity. Additionally, you have two choices between storage. We have the 128GB and 256GB storage. Both of them will come with 6GB RAM, and both of them will have a UFS 2.1 storage type. Meaning it's not going to be super fast, not really, for instance, as fast as things like Apple, Samsung's, and for instance OnePlus's. Just to kind of compare them to other devices, those have a significantly improved storage type, which means read and write speeds will be faster on those devices. But objectively looking at it, this phone records at 4K, but only at 30 frames, so the video size here shouldn't be big enough to be bottlenecked by the storage, so I believe this should be fine enough for this device. Just for instance, if you're trying to copy large amount of data from your computer over the USB-C, you might not do it as quickly as some other phones. That's just a drawback here. Now, moving into the battery section, it comes with a 4500 mAh battery. Like I mentioned before, we have the 18-watt charger, and it also comes with a wireless charging, quick wireless charging at 15 watts, which actually is really nice, and has NFC, as you would probably expect, under finger display, sensor, Type-C, and headphone jack, which again, that's kind of wasn't actually expecting that. As you can see, we have a headphone jack. And lastly, it looks like they also include right here next to it this black little hole right here. This is, I believe, an infrared sensor, so you can basically use the phone as a remote control to control appliances in your house, ACs, TVs, and so on, which personally I don't really use it that often, but it's sometimes nice, especially if you lose a remote. You can just go to the application, select what device you're trying to control, and just use your phone instead if you can find your remote. And yeah, that will basically conclude the overview of the device with the price of $499. I have to say this is a nice device. The only thing that I'm personally missing in here is a high refresh rate display. That would make this phone just an amazing device, minus the cameras. But to be honest, for $500, I don't think you should be expecting some top performance in camera. So this is what I would say a respectable camera performance for the price. The only thing it's missing is higher refresh rate, and in my opinion everything in here is really nice, especially the display. The display is one of the key parts of this phone, and it looks outstanding. So this would conclude the overview, and if you found this very helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.